This section heading is called Configuring the Syslog Client. So now whenever you're doing any sort of configuration, you should always be following best practices. So now the best practices that we're going to follow are going to be these for Syslog. So again, logs should be sent to a centralized location. Logging 7 should be avoided. We should create log files based on category, IDS, email, etc. And logging should be synchronized with an NTP server. So now when you're talking about Syslog, you're going to be talking about facility and also severity, but with Snort, we call that severity priority. So your facility is related to a service, and then your priority is kind of like it sounds. So when you receive a message from that service, how important is that message? So now here's kind of like the bigger picture. So we have Snort. Snort is configured for inline mode on this device. So it can not only stop a threat, but it can also send an alert message. So what we're going to do first is we're going to configure Snort to actually send those messages to the local Syslog service. Then we'll configure the Syslog service to actually send them to a centralized location, which is going to be at the same location as our web server. All right, so now coming over to Alice's station over here. So the first thing that we're going to do, as I said, is we're going to actually configure Snort to actually forward those messages to the local syslog service. So first we're going to type sudo sed. We're going to take a look at the defaults for syslog within the Snort configuration file. So we're going to do this by taking a look at lines 481 to 482. So 482, and then Etsy, Etsy, snort, conf. There we go. Okay, so for syslog, this is the defaults and they're commented out. So this functionality is disabled by default. And then what we're going to do is we're going to enable it by removing the comment character. Now we're going to need to edit something within here because our local syslog service already has this facility over here already taken up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go according to Syslog's documentation, which recommends that we should, use a particular range, local 5 up to some other local. We're going to just change it to local 5. So what we're doing is we're having all of our IDP devices identified by local 5 on this centralized server. And then what we're going to do, as we're going to see later on, is we're going to separate where the messages that are coming from based on device location. Okay, so now to do this, we're going to use sed, so sudo sed, and edit the in-place file. We're going to put this on line 482, because remember 481, 482, so 482. And we're going to cut out what's currently on there, and then we're going to replace it with what we're going to put right here. So I'm going to copy and then paste this in, and then I'll edit this to local 5. Okay, and then I'll go over to the end here and put our tick and then space Etsy snort.conf. All right, so now we want to verify that everything is good, and everything looks good. Okay, so now that we have Snort sending the alert messages to the local syslog service, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look inside of the syslog's configuration file. So we're going to do a -3, and then the reason that we're doing this is because we like to get an understanding of how things are working here. So it's syslog.conf. Okay, so what we're finding on the last 3 lines of this file is that there's this include directive. So this include directive is used to include all configuration files that are within this directory. One configuration file in particular is going to have a bunch of essentially default rules within there, and we're going to add another one. So now to add a rule within there, we're going to do sudo nano, and this is going to be Etsy, our syslog D, and then it's 50 default.conf. Okay, so we're going to scroll down to line 4 with his white space, and you've seen me mention a while ago about auth, so you can see auth is being applied here and here, so that facility is already taken, and again, that's why we changed it to local 5. And now we're going to type local 5 dot alert, so we have our facility and priority specified right here, and we're going to send them to the centralized server, which is yourbank.com, and this is our web server. So we're going to add an ampersand tilde over here to ensure that any log files that get sent to this location also don't get sent to these log files that are down here. So now we're going to do a control X, Y to save, hit enter, and we're going to test to see if our syntax within that file is correct. So we're going to do a R syslog D-N1. And if we reach the end of the configuration file without receiving any errors, then everything is good. And now we're going to read in the changes. So we're going to type sudo service, and it's going to be R syslog, and we're going to restart.